Hello, hello, I'm Andrew Fantasia. Welcome back to another one of our special review marathons. That's right, here in Canada, we don't get your fancy schmancy movie theaters anymore because vaccines are a slow thing here. So that's why we've started a new tradition here on the channel where every 3 months I watch as many movies as I can, and then I try to review them all as fast as I can in one video. Dear God, help me. The rules are pretty much the same here. They have to be movies I have never seen before, and they have to be movies that are not new. And by new, I mean they have to have come out before the year 2021 Anno Domini. So as you'll see, we have movies from just last year, and we have movies from so long ago, your grandparents weren't even born. I don't know, unless you are a grandparent yourself, in which case they probably were. Between the months of April and June, I got to see 33 movies that I had never seen before. I saw some crazy things that I didn't think I would ever see, so it's time to talk about them. Let's see how fast we can do this. 36.15 Code Père Noël. An astoundingly entertaining French film that was essentially Home Alone a year before Home Alone. Replace Kevin McAllister with a young Bruce Wayne and the two lovable burglars with a psychotic murderer, and you get this. The bizarre title refers to the Minitel, which was a precursor to the internet that was really big in France at the time. This was like a little French Christmas time capsule, and I loved it. Airport. My favorite movie on today's list, the original 1970 Airport, was an absolute treat, especially for someone like me who really digs the aesthetic of that decade's cinematography. This is what kickstarted the 70s disaster film boom, so Airport is to its genre what Iron Man 1 is to comic book movies. If you enjoy any of Roland Emmerich's movies for some reason, everything that guy has made is owed almost entirely to Airport. Check this out. It's terrific and tense, and it has 2 sequels that I can't wait to watch now. Alice doesn't live here anymore. Before he was bad-mouthing the defining cinematic achievement of this generation and making the same mafia movie 17 times, Martin Scorsese had a much more diverse palette of colors in his arsenal. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore is a simple, quiet little drama about a recently widowed woman who hits the road with her bratty son trying to squeeze out just enough of a living so they can put food on the table. I liked it. And Ellen Burstyn gives a performance that's so good, it's scary. The Autopsy of Jane Doe. This quiet little horror flick starring Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch surprised me with how gripping it was. The whole thing is just 2 characters in a morgue trying to perform an autopsy, and then spooky shit starts happening because of course it does, but it all works. Nothing feels cheesy or over the top, and the movie goes to a really cool place that I was kind of hoping it would, but expecting it wouldn't. Definitely not for the squeamish though. Blood-sucking freaks. Speaking of not for the squeamish, that goes quadruple for this. Guys, don't watch Blood-Sucking Freaks. Just don't. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, that's subjective after all, but I am saying that it's a movie about terrible, terrible things. And it's a disgusting movie to boot. This was made by Troma, a company infamous for making disgusting shock schlock, and even they agree with me. This is the only movie in Troma's library that the company heads refuse to promote. It just goes too far for no reason other than because it thinks it's funny. Body Double. I am kicking myself for not knowing that this Brian De Palma thriller existed. Oh, excuse me, this Brian De Palma neo-noir erotic thriller. Yeah, you just got a whole lot more interested, didn't you? Even though the parallels to Alfred Hitchcock films are blindingly obvious, particularly Vertigo and Rear Window, Body Double still manages to stand on the legs of its own plot and features some of the most epitomic imagery of its decade. This may not be the 1980s at its best, but it's definitely the 1980s at its most. The Brood. A psychological horror from the twisted mind of David Cronenberg. The Brood is made and set in Canada. You can see the Metro Toronto Police Station in an establishing shot, so a lot of locations and imagery felt very familiar to me, especially all of the scenes at the kindergarten. If you don't like body horror, The Brood will probably nauseate you, and the whole central concept of psychoplasmics feels like it needs a lot more explanation than we end up getting. Castle Freak. Back in the day, if you wanted to make a good horror at low cost, you'd pack the cast and crew off to Italy, which is exactly what they did here. The director and stars of Reanimator reunite for this classic old dark house tale about a family who inherits an Italian castle that just happens to have a monstrous thing living in the dungeons beneath it. Don't bring the kids though. Things get nasty real fast in this castle. Christmas Evil. The Wikipedia summary says it all. A deranged man who is obsessed with Santa Claus puts on the suit and goes on a murderous rampage. I kind of liked it. It came out in 1980, so it's full of the kinds of Christmas decorations that I remember, with lots of warmth and color. I think modern Christmas looks like a robotic hellscape. Even though it's about homicide, there's an undeniable bit of holiday warmth infused within every shot of Christmas Evil, and for that, I salute it. Deadbeat at Dawn, an ultra-low-budget revenge story about two gangs who really don't care for one another. Director Jim Van Bebber wrote it, starred in it, and performed all of his own stunts. This movie is so grimy and disgusting, you're going to want to hop in the shower the second it's over. Deep Red. Dario Argento is the master of Italian horror, and Deep Red, or Profondo Rosso, is arguably his magnum opus. It was one of the best straight-up murder mysteries I've seen in a long time, with lots of neat clues sprinkled throughout for eagle-eyed viewers. One of the first scenes even has a visual reference to my favorite painting, Edward Hopper's Nighthawks. Deep Red is deeply cool. A girl walks home alone at night. The best way to describe A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night is it's a black and white art house horror western with very little dialogue about a girl who is also a vampire, written and produced in the United States but acted out entirely in Persian. That sentence is either going to sell you immediately or send you running for the hills. Either reaction is fine. Hack-O-Lantern. This flick about a small-town American family whose grandfather is leader of a satanic cult is so off the beaten path that it doesn't even have its own entry on Wikipedia. I would absolutely suggest skipping this. It looks awful and it's not very entertaining, and it had way more implied incest than I was ready to handle. Haunt. A solid slasher movie about a group of 20-somethings looking for some cheap thrills on Halloween night. They stumble across a dairy farm that's been converted into a haunted house escape room kind of thing, and you can see where it goes from here. Haunt had a limited theatrical release back in September 2019, and shortly afterwards it premiered on Shudder, where it was ranked their #1 most watched movie premiere of that year. Jack Frost. A year before Michael Keaton terrified audiences as a living snowman, Scott McDonald terrified audiences as a different living snowman who looks nothing like he does on the poster. This came out 5 months after Batman and Robin and might be tied with it for the sheer number of ice-related puns. It also features a troubling scene where the evil snowman has his way with Shannon Elizabeth. I guess I'd say the whole experience was chilling. I'm sorry, I am so sorry. Love and Monsters. This was released on US Netflix on October of last year, so technically it counts, and I'm glad it does. Because Love and Monsters is an imaginative, fun adventure. You remember adventures? Do you remember when adventures used to be a thing? Because they haven't been a thing in a criminally long time. This movie actually bears a bit of a resemblance to my book, Side Scroller, available now on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Buy one for each of your friends, please. The Love Witch. A beautiful witch moves to a new town and tries to find love, but the love potions she brews are so strong that it makes her targeted men do crazy things, which often, spoilers, end in their own deaths. Director Anna Belair shot it on 35mm film and printed it from an original negative, so the whole thing has a gorgeous Technicolor glow to it. The entire time, I thought I was watching something made in the 1960s, and it wasn't until I looked it up that I learned this thing was only made 5 years ago. Maniac. Plain and simple, Maniac is the story of a deeply disturbed serial killer. It's told without any kind of shtick or bombast, played completely straight, and that elevates it to a whole other level of creepiness. It came out just 3 years after The Summer of Sam, when a real-life serial killer stalked the same New York City streets. The two even bear an eerie resemblance to each other. Here's a not-so-fun bit of trivia. The first murder in the movie was filmed at a hotel. New York was in such bad shape back then that a few weeks after they wrapped filming there, somebody in real life actually got beheaded at that same hotel. If you're okay with some really disturbing themes, I'd say give Maniac a watch. It's worth it for the subway chase scene alone. Mother's Day. As disturbing as Maniac was, it's got nothing on Mother's Day, which released the same year. It's about a family of inbred creeps living in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey who kidnap unsuspecting campers and do awful, unspeakable things to them just for their own sadistic pleasure. Once you watch this, you can't unwatch it. I'll just leave it at that. One Cut of the Dead. This Japanese comedy is hilarious and sweet and a perfect representation of the absolute chaos that is a movie set. If you're the kind of person who puts stock in Rotten Tomato scores, One Cut of the Dead is 100% certified fresh, so there you go. It's one of the best movies about movie making I've ever seen, period. Peyton Place. One of the most tragic films ever made about small-town Americana. Every bad thing that happens to the residents of Peyton Place can be blamed on the dangerous notion that one has to keep up societal appearances in order to maintain what the status quo deems a respectable reputation. The saddest part of all is, there are still people falling into this trap today. Romancing the Stone. Kathleen Turner, Michael Douglas, and Danny DeVito pour on the cheese in this romantic comedy that I've heard about all my life and only just seen now. I think I was a bit let down because I was expecting a female-led Indiana Jones kind of thing, and what I got instead was mostly just planned adventure and romance and a dull package. It was just fine. Sanjuro. Imagine if Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name character was a Japanese Ronin and also, actually likable, and you get Sanjuro, the second of two movies revolving around the nameless, masterless samurai who wanders feudal Japan, solving problems for people in exchange for food and sake. You can't go wrong with Toshiro Mifune, and you can't go wrong with director Akira Kurosawa. Sanjuro is Sanjtastic. Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb. The most recently released film on today's list is this delightful Netflix documentary. Secrets of the Saqqara Tomb was so refreshing in that it didn't try to drop any big ambiguous revelations or half-formed theories like literally every other documentary I've seen about the ancient world. Instead, it just covers the feel-good story of an Egyptian team's expedition to dig up a tomb and make some neat discoveries. There's a ticking clock element because after Ramadan, the Egyptian government plans to pull their funding, so they've got to work fast. I wish every ancient Egyptian archaeological discovery had a film just like this to document its process. Also, there's a mummified lion cub in it. You're welcome. Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. So by now you may have noticed a Christmas murder theme going on here. I was going through a phase. Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 is a so bad it's hilarious slasher film that is absolutely not meant to be taken seriously at all. We have this to thank for the infamous Garbage Day meme, and frankly it's just a fun little slice of camp cinema history that I'm really glad I watched. Also, the directing is kind of amazing. I'm not kidding. Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bowl-orama. Yes, this movie is actually called Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bowl-orama. Don't you hate it when you're trying to perform an innocent sorority hazing ritual, but then you end up breaking into a mall and accidentally releasing an evil genie who was trapped inside a bowling trophy, and now he's trying to kill you and your friends, and also Linnea Quigley is there? I'm kidding, the people in this movie aren't friends. Tammy and the TRex. Okay, buckle up. Denise Richards is dating Paul Walker, but her evil, jealous ex and his gang of thugs beat the crap out of him, so a mad scientist played by Weekend at Bernie Lomax puts Paul Walker's brain into the body of an animatronic dinosaur. And then Denise Richards just accepts it, and she's walking around flirting with this Tyrannosaur. Look at this poster! Look at it! I don't do ratings, but 5 stars. Tenet. Christopher Nolan is very, very smart, but sometimes I feel like he's too smart for his own good. This 2.5-hour epic of quantum physics and time inversion and Sator squares left a lot of audiences scratching their heads, and it's easy to see why. But despite the fact that I needed a flowchart to help me through it, I ended up really enjoying Tenet. I think it's Nolan's best non-Batman movie since Inception. And whether you think that's a compliment or not, you're right. Terror Train. Whether it's during Halloween, prom, or a graduation party on a giant cross-country train ride, it seems like someone is always trying to disembowel Jamie Lee Curtis with a sharp object, except this one has David Copperfield playing the world's creepiest magician before he retired from the acting world to actually become the world's creepiest magician. In the trilogy of great Canadian slashers that is Black Christmas, Prom Night, and this, Terror Train probably falls in the middle for me. Good, but not great. Troma's War. The same people who are responsible for blood-sucking freaks somehow managed to make a heartwarming movie too, or at least as heartwarming as a Troma film can get. Troma's War answers this question. What if the island from Lost was inhabited by an assortment of terrorists and all the plane crash survivors had to make like Rambo if they wanted to get home in one piece? If not for the fact that there are characters named Senor Sida and the AIDS Brigade, and that a pair of evil conjoined twins get cut in half with a machete, you could almost forget you were watching a Troma picture. Tourist trap. A group of young people are traveling through the desert when their car breaks down, at which point they are methodically stalked and killed by a deranged cowboy who uses telekinetic powers to move mannequins around because he thinks mannequins are neat. This is why I love movies. Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. What happens when you take iconic 80s villain Gordon Gekko and stick him in 2008 during the bursting of the real estate bubble? You get a watered-down sequel. And also Shia LaBeouf is there now, so sorry about that. Wall Street 2 is fine, but it feels really lukewarm when compared to the original. I understand wanting to hear Gordon's take on the housing market crisis, but it just ended up being something that wasn't worth making a movie about. Blue Horseshoe doesn't love this either. Wolf Cop. Part man, part wolf, all cop. Also all Canadian, which means this feels like a gritty comic book origin story just with a lot more plaid. Canadian movies have a certain presence to them, and you can feel it here. Wolf Cop was filmed entirely in Saskatchewan using local actors. I enjoyed it, and it's nice to see some Canadian films getting love in the foreign markets. It's the 3rd best werewolf movie I've seen. And we did it! We finished. We got to the end. That was my April to June watch list. Some of those movies, I mean, wow. Just wow. Anyway, as always, I hope at least one film on this list got your attention and made you curious enough to go look it up and check it out, because these are all worth a gander. Tammy and the T-Rex, man. So this has been another review marathon. I have been Andrew Fantasia, and the good news is you won't have to wait until the end of September to see my handsome face again, because starting this summer, movies are slowly starting to pick up some steam back here in Canada. I don't know if we feel 100% safe to go to movie theaters yet, but they are happening more frequently and releases are a bit easier to get a hold of. So I think Thumb Together reviews are going to start slowly trickling back into the channel. So we have that to look forward to as well. But I'll see you here again soon, whether it's another marathon, another review, or maybe even a video essay, because I got a few more of those coming up very soon. But in the meantime, hang in there, stay safe, stay healthy, stay sexy for the love of God, and I'll see you next time. Until then, adios.